Borrow from your 401k to improve your household balance sheet. Yes, my friends, we are going to dive into this again. In fact, after I do this, I'm going to read you this academic article. We'll go on the whiteboard, so it'll be a two-part, maybe a three-part series, depending on how lucky you are. I don't know. Is that lucky? So we're going to use this academic research that I find very fascinating, and I think you will too. Then we'll get back on the whiteboard, and I'll share with you the charts that I had done for my first book, Strategic Money Planning, 8 ways to get your financial house in order, which you can buy on Amazon. Kindle Unlimited is free. Amazon, I think the shipping price, because it's in color, is not cheap. It's $18.99, but the Kindle is like $4.49, I think, something like that. Or if you have Kindle Unlimited, get it for free too. All right, so let's dive right into this. So welcome to Heritage Wealth Planning YouTube channel, my friends, the place you come to learn all about borrowing from your 401k and whether or not it can help with your balance sheet. And the answer is yes, it can. And we'll dive into that here today. So don't forget to subscribe down below. And as always, thumbs up, comments, the whole thing. Lastly, remember, 401k is all-inclusive. We're talking 403Bs if they allow a loan. A lot of 403B providers don't, but some do. We're talking certainly TSP, Thrift Savings Plan. So 401k, 403Bs, TSP, 457s, I'm almost positive you can't get a loan from there. It seems like I'm missing one, but okay. You can't borrow from your IRA. So this is just an employer-sponsored plan, all right? So let's dive right into this. Like I said, this can be let's time check, 10:37. So we'll try to divide this up in no more than 10 minutes a shot. All right, so this is from the National Tax Journal of 2010. The authors are Gang Lee and Paul A. Smith, and they say 401k loans and household balance sheets. As you know me, I do like to look beyond just the tried and true from an investment firm. I like to dive into the deep in the academic research. National Tax Journal is legit. I don't think that's what the AICPA does. I'm not sure what the I forgot. The National Tax Journal is legit. I'm trying to think. There's another tax publication. I'm drawing a blank. But anyway, so Gang Lee and Paul Smith wrote 401k loans and household balance sheets. It seemed like I want to talk about this. No, I was just diving into it, though. All right, let me get rid of that. I'll tell you what, let's go over here. There we go. Sweet. Look at that. Let's see if I can make it bigger. The problem if I made it bigger is it cut it off on the side here, and I didn't want to do that. Bear with me just 1 second. Can I make that guy bigger? And see, that's not what I wanted to do. All right. We show in a simple model that households will choose 401k loans over other consumer loans if the opportunity cost of the loan, i.e. the foregone asset return, is less than the cost of other loans, and that few households would carry high-cost consumer debt without first utilizing 401k loans. Using data from the Survey of Consumer Finances, the SCF forever known, we find that households typically turn to 401k loans only after utilizing more expensive credit. About half of our sample households could benefit from shifting debt to 401k loans, generating savings about $200 to $300 a year, or a 10 to 15% of interest costs. Interesting, huh? One of the key distinctions of a 401k loan relative to other types of consumer loans is that the interest on a 401k loan is paid into the 401k account instead of to an outside lender. Who said you that? Your old buddy Josh right here. Thus, the true economic cost of a 401k loan is not the loan's contract interest rate, but the foregone returns on the plan assets while the loan is outstanding. And they talk about, as we show below, there are no significant tax consequences from the 401k loans unless it is not repaid, in which case they are subject to income tax and in some cases a 10% penalty. Repayments are typically made automatically by payroll deductions, but defaults can occur. And again, some guy posted yesterday, he knew a bunch of people who got laid off. Absolutely. If you're borrowing and you get laid off, you're in a world of hurt. No other way around that. So just be careful. But remember, we're going to talk more about this. There are no significant tax consequences from a 401k loan unless they are not repaid. Interesting there, huh? Because we always see double taxation. We're going to talk about that. We find that, as with many such questions, whether 401k loans strengthen or weaken household balance sheet depends on what we choose as a counterfactual scenario. A household that would otherwise finance consumption using high-interest consumer loans, credit card, could strengthen his balance sheet by consolidating debt into a 401k loan instead. On the other hand, a household earning a high rate of return on a 401k and eligible for a low rate loan from outside the 401k, say a tax deductible home equity line, could be better off avoiding the 401k loan. We would expect few households to carry high-cost consumer debt without utilizing 401k loans. So that's what they would expect. However, using the most recent waves of the SCF, Consumer Survey of Consumer Finances, we do not find direct correlations between 401k loans and cost measures, though we do find correlation with overall debt and indicators of borrowing constraints. We find a large number of households carrying high-cost consumer debt without utilizing 401k loans. That's what they found. They're like, that doesn't make any sense. We estimate that taking into account outside interest and expected rates of return on 401k assets, about half our sample of loan-eligible households could strengthen their balance sheet by shifting outside outstanding consumer debt to 401k loans. Taking the year 2007 as an example, and depending on the assumption of future 401k returns, the aggregate annual gain to households from consolidating debt this way could be as high as $1 to $2 billion, my friends. We're talking billions, or $200 to $300 per household's net of borrowing costs, which is a 10 to 15% reduction on interest payments. Let's keep going down. And I'm going to put a link to this article in the show notes, too. It's actually pretty easy to read, frankly. There are some charts and whatnot, and we'll dive into that a little bit. All told, our findings suggest that households tend to turn to 401k loans when other sources of borrowing are less available, rather than substituting 401k borrowing for higher cost consumer loans. And then they go to 401k loan rules. According to the tax code, 401k loans are not treated as withdrawals and hence are not taxable, as long as certain requirements are met. In particular, the maximum size of a tax-free 401k loan is the lesser of $50,000 or 50% of the vested balance, whichever is lower. All right. The 401k loan must be repaid within 5 years, though some loans for purchase, not refinanced, can be paid over a longer period. Other rules regarding 401k loans are set by the plan. For example, the loan interest rate is typically set to equal the prime rate or prime plus 1 percentage point. And just in my experience, that's exactly right. We had a $100 loan fee at USAA, and it was equal to prime. And I think back then when I took it was 4.5%. I actually used a 401k loan to get LASIK on my eyes, by the way. I think that's $3,300 is what I use. It's interesting, actually, because we're going to dive into that about the literature, the lack thereof. In fact, they talk about it here, and I'm not going to dive too deeply into that because I just want to make sure we get through this because there's something that's pretty important about this, the whole article. But let's keep going down. All right, so I am skipping over some of the relevant things, but if I did, this would take longer than you're bargaining for, so I don't want to. A number of other papers are similar in spirit to ours in that they explore household finance puzzles. For example, a bunch of people in 2003 and 2004 find that households often do not optimally locate assets across their taxable versus tax-preferred accounts. That's called asset location. They have 50% in stocks, 50% in bonds. They have 50% in the Roth in stocks, 50% in IRA in stocks, and 50% taxable in stocks. Don't do that. While other people show that many households could improve their balance sheet by increasing 401k contributions while slowing prepayments on mortgage debt. Other people find that many households simultaneously hold expensive credit card debt and checking account balances at the same time. And while the checking account balances bear very low nominal interest rates, and that's taxable, of course, raising the question why households will not use their liquid assets to pay down their high expensive credit card debts. One might argue that households could prefer to keep a high rate auto loan on his balance sheet in order to keep his 401k borrowing options open for emergencies. But this would make less sense with respect to credit card borrowing, since the household could pay off its credit card balance with a 401k loan and then use the credit card for future emergency borrowing. I could not agree with that more. When should you take 401k loans? For households considering a 401k loan, we expect that the net cost of the 401k borrowing would be a key consideration in the decision. That is, for a given amount of total debt, the household would borrow from its 401k loan from its 401k accounts rather than an outside lender if the cost of the 401k loan were less than the cost of the outside loan. I'm getting 7.99 on my Citibank credit card. I'm getting 4.5 on my 401k loan. I should borrow against my 401k loan. That would be inherently obvious, and that's what they would think. For an outside loan, the cost is essentially its after-tax interest rate. For a 401k loan, on the other hand, the cost is the value of the foregone returns on assets. I could not agree with that more. In the real world, borrowing costs can be increased by loan fees, and these guys include an annual 401k loan fee of $50. And again, I said at USA it was $100, but whatever. Let's see. Let's keep going down here, and I'll give you some more of my thoughts. We keep going. So here you can see a bunch of the charts that they use. I'm not going to dive into the charts because you'll unsubscribe and never watch another of my videos. All right, I do want to talk about taxes. I get this all the time. Double taxation. Let me make sure we're not too far up against it. Yeah, we'll go on for a couple more minutes, and then we'll split this out into part two. Taxes. The simple model illustrates why 401k loans are not really double taxed, as it is sometimes argued by Dugas in 2007. The argument for double taxation is that 401k loan repayments are not deductible, and yet they are taxed upon withdrawal in a retirement account. I hear this so much, it actually is one of my pet peeves. The loans payments are not deductible. So when you take out $5,000 from your 401k and you put that $5,000 in over the course of 60 payments, those payments are not tax deductible. That's true. But the reality of double taxation is much less than it first appears. Under a consumption tax, which is the appropriate conceptual basis for analyzing retirement account taxation, each dollar of consumption should be taxed once. Recall that loan proceeds from which come from pre-tax dollars in a traditional 401k are not taxed upon receipt. The loan proceeds, you're getting them tax-free. So yes, you're not getting tax deduction on money going back in to pay that because you got the money out tax-free. It is not double tax. I cannot stress this enough. When I got the $5,000 or whatever, I think it's $3,300 for my LASIK, I paid no tax on that $3,300. And I paid no tax on the money going in. So I got a tax deduction on the money going in. I got it out tax-free. That's what happened. Thus, I don't get a tax deduction on money going back in to pay off the amount I took out tax-free. Inherently, they would not give you a tax deduction on money I already got out tax-free. Thus, recall that loan proceeds are not taxed upon receipt. Thus, repaying the loan with after-tax dollars is simply an indirect way to ensure that the consumption of loan proceeds is taxed once. The tax at withdrawal, in turn, ensures that the consumption of the repayments is also taxed once. Thus, the loan principal is not taxed twice. Interest payments, on the other hand, are taxed twice since they are taxed at withdrawal and not deductible when made. However, in practice, the effect of this excess tax relative to the consumption tax benchmark is offset by the countervailing tax break, the time value and the tax deferral of the consumption of the loan. Again, I'm getting the money out tax-free. Not paying any taxes on the time difference between when I'm putting the money back in. Recall that loan repayments are typically made over a 5-year period, and since in reality taxes are effectively paid upon repayment of the loan rather than its receipt, borrowers enjoy a tax break by spreading the tax payments over time. For typical parameter values, this nearly completely offsets the double taxation of interest. I cannot stress that enough. You get money out. You put money in tax-free. You get money out tax-free. You're putting money in taxable, and you're getting money out taxable. That's how it works, my friends. No other way around that. The interest that you're putting back in, theoretically, this double taxation of interest, that money goes in, again, it's spread out over 5 years, so you're getting a tax break on basically spreading that payment back. This does not disadvantage the 401k loan, the supposedly double taxation, relative to the outside loan because the outside loan faces the same treatment. The consumer loan principal and the interest payments are generally not tax deductible. I mean, we could talk about home equity lines. Those are no longer tax deductible for the most part. All right. This is important now. We'll end up with this one for this one episode. If tax rates fall in retirement, as is often supposed, the discouraging effect of borrowing against the 401k is even stronger. If tax rates rise sufficiently in retirement, however, 401k loans could be encouraged by taxes, even in the case of deductible outside interest payments. So what they're saying here is if you're going to pay a higher tax rate in the future, it makes sense to borrow from your 401k now. Absolutely. If you're going to pay a lower tax rate in the future, it might not make so much sense to borrow from your 401k. Now, this is just looking at tax arbitrage. This is not looking at your outside credit card tax amount, because that is fully taxable. So they're just saying at the end of the day, people should borrow against their 401k, certainly, to pay off high outstanding consumer debt if they think their tax rate is going to be higher. That's a non-brainer. If they think their tax rates are going to be lower in the future, thus they can draw their 401k to low to minimal taxes, they can make an argument that they shouldn't borrow from their 401k. I completely still disagree with that. And we'll talk about that here in part 2. So stay with me, subscribe down below, and we will see you here in just 1 minute while I go up and refresh my phone, get some water, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks, guys.